Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Joy of Sticks. Dickhead here with your Atari ST gaming channel. Today we are doing another tier list. I really enjoyed making these. We've done a Bitmap Brothers tier list, we've done a Power Pack tier list, and I've been racking my brains thinking, you know, what subject, what area, what oeuvre could we do the next tier list on? And as I was doing a bit of research for a different video, I realised that there's not that many overhead racing games, right? So we could quite feasibly do a tier list on that. So here we are. We have got some overhead racing games for us to have a look at. Now, it's worth noting that I had to be a bit selective about this. There are lots of overhead driving games that I've not included here because they're not really racing. Excuse me. They're not really racing games. You know, I'm thinking of the likes of, I don't know, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but there are plenty of games where you drive around and you shoot things and that kind of stuff. But like the Spy Who Loved Me, for example, or what's the Stuntman game from Codemasters? I think it's called Super Stuntman, in fact. Yeah, I mean, the goal of the game is not to race, not to win. So I haven't included those. That being said, I don't think this is a fully comprehensive list. There are at least 3 more, I think, that I couldn't get them to run. Couldn't get them to run. Turbo GT was one of them, which looks like it might be a bit quite decent, so that's a bit of a shame. And Karting Grand Prix from Anco, which I did notice got 24% in SD action, so I don't think we're missing out on much there. So anyway, should we kick off? Now you can see here we've got how many games we've got to run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games to get through. We're starting off with Jupiter's Master Drive. Now I have to be honest, and before I started making this tier list and researching for it, I hadn't played Jupiter's Master Drive at all. It's from Ubisoft, published by Ubisoft, developed by somebody called the POF Corporation. Not really heard of those before. It was released in 1990. It's got David Whittaker music, which is quite nice. It's basically a futuristic car game. You know, you got weapons to blow up your teammates and all that kind of business. Looks very sci-fi. It kind of puts me in mind of like rock and roll racing on the Super Nintendo, that kind of feel, except it's properly overhead, it's not isometric or anything like that. Now it does have quite a small play field, you know, quite a small view of the screen, but I'll forgive that basically because that just means it scrolls smoother. So, you know, if that's what they had to do to get it scrolling nice and smoothly, can't say I blame him. And it's got some really nice touches. I mean, it's got 8-way scrolling for one, but it's got like pickups on the road and stuff, and you can pick up money and spend it in the shop to upgrade your car. It's got this kind of level overview thing where you go into different planets to do different events, and there's a Jupiter in the middle where you go and take part in the main tournament. And the shop is really cool with this little guy. Reminiscent of Xenon 2 there, but you can like do a little gamble on the slot machine. Yeah, it's just a really solid game. The gameplay itself is really nice. The control of your vehicle's really good. Oh yeah, like different when you go to different planets, you have different vehicles that you're driving. It doesn't have a profound effect on the gameplay, but it's still a nice little touch. It's a really good game. Really good game. Now, is it A good? I'm not sure. I'm thinking low A, high B. I know there's some of you out there that really have a high regard for this game. I'm going to put it in high B for now. We can always review that later. Now, the next one. The next one's an interesting one because we've got Ivan Ironman Stewart's Super Off-Road Racing. This was released in 1990. It's based on a Leyland arcade. Published by Virgin and developed by Graph Gold, right? Graph Gold. The Graph Gold. So it should be really, really good, right? And it seems to have everything. You know, I played the arcade when I was a kid and loved it, and then I played it on my friend's Mega Drive and loved it, and then the ST version, it has some issues. It has some issues. You know, at first glance, it seems to have everything. I mean, really nice graphics and presentation. It's very, very similar in the way it's presented to the arcade, which is really nice. You even put your, you put your initials and then your date of birth in and stuff like that, so it remembers you. Really cool, really cool. And like I say, the graphics are great. Love the way the trucks are animated, the way they bobble about on the rough terrain is brilliant. And, it's got all the stuff from the arcade, the upgrades. You're earning money by winning races, and you can pick up money on the track, and then you're upgrading your trucks, which is great. But the ST version has this problem where it's got these weird difficulty spikes. Like if you graphed it on a graph, the difficulty would do this, like a sine wave. It's just bizarre, because basically the first race is ridiculously easy, the second race is a bit more of a challenge, and then the third race is next to impossible, and then you have to use a continue. And when you use a continue, the next race is ridiculously easy again, and then a really hard one, and then an impossible one, and you use another continue, and then you just do that and that until you run out of continues. It's really annoying. I know it's come from an arcade, and the idea of the arcade was to just, get you to empty your pockets of your 10p's, but it's just irritating that the home version has this. They should have got rid of the continues. It should have just been, monetary based, so you didn't have to use up a continue if you came second. You just get less money, and therefore less money to upgrade, and eventually you get to the point where you're just not competing anymore. Maybe you get knocked out if you come last or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'm spitballing, but it's just this difficulty that lets it down, really. I mean, it just spoils the fun. Now, it would be borderline S, really, if it didn't have that issue. It is that good. But I can't forgive it of this issue. I'm going to have to knock it down into high B. Like, if you just played the first couple of tracks, you'd think I was insane. Why are you putting it in B? This is such a good game. But this difficulty issue just really spoils the fun and makes me not want to play it. I'd much rather play another version where it doesn't have this weird difficulty trajectory, if you like. Which brings us on to the next game. Now, the next game's related. It's not developed by the same people. This one's actually developed by Storm, or Sales Curve, the converters of the brilliant ST version of Rodland, it should be noted. But yeah, this is also a Leyland arcade game. I think in the arcade it was called Danny Sullivan's Indy Heat, or maybe that was just in America, I don't know, because obviously we don't have the IndyCar racing here very much. We don't see it on our tellies and stuff in Britain, so we wouldn't know who Danny Sullivan was. But yes, Indy Heat. So it's very similar. In the arcade, it had a very similar presentation. It's got a very similar, competing for money, which you upgrade your car, kind of style to it, and very visually very similar to Ivan Iron Man. But like I say, this time converted by Sales Curve to the ST. Now, I came across this on a ST Action demo cover disc, which I think only had one track. Did it have one? Maybe two? But I played it tons because it was so fun. And now coming back to it, the full version, I've had a really good time with it. It's got an Alistair Brimble soundtrack at the beginning, bit of digital music, which is nice. In terms of graphics, the tracks look really, really cool. They're really well drawn. These kind of little Lilliputian top-down view of these cities with a sprawling track in it. It's just a really cool. Like, every track is Monaco basically, but a different layout. And they look amazing. I mean, the sound is terrible. It's really quite irritating sound, to be honest. And it's got very narrow tracks, which can make overtaking a little bit annoying, but not too bad. The overtaking is quite I mean, that's a key thing in a racing game, isn't it? You want the overtaking to feel good. So the collisions are a little annoying, but actually when you successfully overtake or you do a little deft maneuver, it does feel really good. So it's got that in its benefit. Now, because the sprites are so small, the cars are so small, sometimes it's not immediately readable which direction you're facing, and that has an impact then on how well you can control going around the corners and stuff. So that's not great. What does it have going in its favour? The pitting is cool. You basically have a fuel gauge, and your car can take damage and end up setting on fire and stuff. So you've got to pit in occasionally, and when you pit in and how long you pit in for is quite strategic, really. So that's really cool as well. Oh, and you can bump into other cars and knock them out of their pits, which is quite funny. And it ends up, there's this really cool little animation where you basically kill one of the pit crew, and they draw a little chalk outline around them. Yeah, quite funny. But it's just a really good game, and it's huge amounts of fun. Now, it doesn't have the difficulty problem that Iron Man Super Off-Road has. It starts really easy, and the difficulty slowly ramps up, so you can have a lot of fun with it, even if you're terrible at the game to begin with. And then it gets to the point where you really need to make sure you're getting lots of upgrades and stuff and on your game in order to keep going. I'm going to pop it in A. And basically, this is the level that Super Off-Road should be in. If it didn't have that difficulty, it'd be right up alongside. They're both very similar in a way. Okay, what we got next? We have got Super Sprint. Now, here we go. We've reached the GOAT. 1987 Super Sprint was released really early in the ST's career, and man, did they nail it. Absolutely nail the arcade conversion. I mean, if you think about the Super Sprint arcade, it was one of those Atari high resolution arcades. It had a free spinning steering wheel. It had no right really being converted so well to home systems, but they just absolutely nailed it here. Was it Electric Dreams were the publisher? I think a team called State of the Art actually did the developing, the coding, but they really did nail it. It's precise. The way the cars control are really consistent. It's just great fun. Absolutely great fun. It's going straight into S. I mean, it's the GOAT, right? It's the absolute best. And also, it was one of the few bits of bragging rights we had as Atari ST owners over our Amiga owning rivals, because they never got a Super Sprint. Well, I say never got. They've spoilt it recently by porting it. What was it, about 10 or so years ago maybe, to the Amiga. So the Amiga does have a version of Super Sprint now, but for the longest time this is the best way to play it at home. I wouldn't even bother with the MAME version. I would say play this version, because the arcade is set up for free spinning steering wheels, and who's got one of those at home? So, the other thing to note about Super Sprint is that it was a 3-player game. You could have 2 joysticks and somebody huddled over the keys in like that kind of fetal position, playing the game. There aren't many ST games out there that you could play more than 2 players at. So that's pretty cool. I mean, without an adapter, right? There were some games produced where you could use an adapter or the STE side ports and jag pads and all sorts, but here, really early in the ST's life, you've got something you can actually play with 3 players. Anyway, just a brilliant game. Absolutely brilliant. Straight into A. Right, what we got next? Next we got Badlands. Now, this is interesting, because Badlands is actually the sequel to Super Sprint. So that was an Atari arcade as well, and the follow-up to Super Sprint, and it's got loads in common with Super Sprint, even to the point where the first track is it the first track, or one of the tracks is really, really similar to the first Super Sprint track, which is a nice little nod. It was released in 1990, published by Domark, this time developed by a team called Tech Software Development, so not ported by the same people, and that's unfortunate because it doesn't quite live up to the ST version of Super Sprint, because you kind of think, right, it's going to be the same, right? It's the same but better. But no, it's just not. I mean, technically the graphics are better because there's more detail and stuff, and cars have more frames of animation or whatever, but I have to say the title screen is absolute garbage. And you got this cool Mad Max post-apocalypse theme, right? but for some reason this time the team porting it, just the charm of the game just didn't survive its transition to the ST's lower resolution. The cars look quite cool, I think, and they're really well animated, but other things are a bit messy. You know, the tracks look okay, but like I say, a bit messy. And the problem again is with difficulty. You know, Super Sprint starts ridiculously easy. You know, you're lapping the computer controls opponents twice on the first track. But here, for some reason, they've kept the difficulty really high from the moment. You know, you can understand the arcade trying to milk you of all your change, but this is a home version, so just chill for a bit. And it just doesn't. It's perfectly possible to lose on the first track. What else can we say about it? The benefits of that, I suppose, that it is quite difficult from the off, is that the upgrades are actually quite essential. You basically need to upgrade your tyres instantly, because the cars are so slidey and rubbish on the first track. You know, if you survive that first track, get yourself some tyres, and then you'll be much better off after that. The other thing I don't like is that progressively as the race goes on, it seems the computer controlled cars get faster and faster, which is too punishing. The slidey physics I've mentioned. The collisions are horrible. The collisions in this game punish you way more than the CPU controlled cars. Collisions with the side of the track are ridiculously punishing. Like, the cars are drawn well and animated well, but the result of the tilted perspective combined with like a slightly imprecise collision detection and slightly slippery controls, it just means it's a bit niggly. It's a bit. So where does Badlands go? It's not as bad as C. It's definitely a B. I don't think it's as good as these two, so I'll put it in the arse end of B. I think that's about right. Okay, what we got next? All right. Next up we got BMX Simulator. This is one of those terrible games that just makes me smile. It's really bad. It is really bad. Really bad. Those are fans of the channel who've been watching for a while might remember my Double Dragon video, which Double Dragon's just a game that is objectively terrible. It's really bad on all fronts, and I just love it. You know, BMX has got a bit of that. I don't love it, don't get me wrong, but it's quite terrible, but it's charming. It was released in 1988. As I say, released by Codemasters, and I just think it's shocking that they've got these driving games that are so bad, and yet Codemasters would go on to be world renowned as some of the best at producing driving video games. It really makes me laugh. We've got some cool music by David Whittaker here. I mean, should we list the positives? Good music by David Whittaker, lovely graphics on the dirt tracks and things. The sprites are well animated. I'm running. There's an action replay. You can play an action replay if you're racing. That's quite cool. And I think I've run out of positive things to say. It's got these ridiculously wafty sound effects. I suppose it's supposed to be pedaling. Since when has pedaling sounded like that? But hey. And it just doesn't really capture the dynamism of the sport, does it? I mean, if you've ever watched BMX racing, it's a ridiculous sport with like people flying everywhere. It's so dynamic, and this does not capture that. It's really pedestrian. Sedate, I think, is the word that comes to mind. It's more of a cycle to the post office simulator than a BMX simulator. But the real big issue I have with this is the turning circle on these bikes. It's a bike. It's a push bike. You know what I mean? You could turn on a sixpence on a BMX, but not these ones. Oh my word. It's like turning an oil tanker sometimes. But sometimes it's really slow to turn, and then at other times it just like turns on a sixpence really quick. And that's almost at random, it seems. And sometimes the bikes just turn themselves. I'm sure it's like coded that way to like supposed to be like it's responding to the terrain in some way. But it doesn't work out like that. It just seems really random, like you're wrestling with the bike. rather than controlling it. And then the collision detection is so wonky, it's hilarious. You'll end up in these positions where you crash into something, and then you crash into the exact same thing 10 times. Get on your bike, crash, get on your bike, crash, get on your bike, crash. It's quite comical. To be honest, it kind of adds to the charm. It makes it a terrible game. It makes it hateful to play against the CPU, because the CPU is an absolute demon at this game. They're incredible. Absolutely brilliant at piloting these terrible bikes. So only play it in multiplayer, and then you might actually have some fun with it. Yeah, where's this going? This is hard to rate. It's got to go in C. I mean, I want to put it higher because it's charming and it's funny, but no, it's a C. It's a C all the way. All right, we're sticking with Codemasters for the next one, and this time we've got Super Grand Prix. We had Whittaker music before. We got Alistair Brimble music this time, which is nice. And this one is a weird one because there's multiple motorsports. Like, you boot it up and it gives you this menu screen of 4 different motorsports, and you think, whoa, I only spent £7 on this game and I've got 4 games. You haven't. You got exactly the same game with 4 different sprites. It's really quite comical. So like you play the Formula 1 version of it, and then you think, oh, let's have a go at the bikes. It's exactly the same. It's just that the sprite looks slightly different. And then you've got this other mode which looks like it might be a destruction derby, and you pick your vehicles, and should be hilarious because you've got like go-karts racing against Bigfoot. But it's not, because like it just uses the exact same engine. It just changes the sprites. I think some of them have got different speeds, but it's hilarious because they really did just stick with the same engine. And I haven't really spoken about how bad the engine is, but it's ridiculously floaty, skiddy game. And then the collisions are horrible, just punishing. And like when you play that destruction, I'm calling it destruction derby, it's not, it's just a race, but you get to pick different vehicles. Even like Bigfoot, if you're racing as Bigfoot and you collide with a go-kart, you shouldn't be bouncing off them, you know. But you do. And then hilariously there's this like drag race one where you think that must be different surely, and no, it's not. It's exactly the same. The only difference there is you can press down to deploy this hilarious looking parachute that slows you down ridiculously quickly. Just nonsense. Just nonsense. Absolutely terrible game. That's going in D. It's got to be a D. Yeah, it's a D. If BMX is a C, that's a D. That makes sense. Okay. Gosh, we're sticking with We're with Codemasters again. A triple threat Codemasters. This time we got a game in 1991. Alistair Brimble music again. This one's developed by Optimus Software. I think they've done a few of these budget Codemasters games for them. Well, I mean, where do we start with this? It's not quite shovelware. It's got some nice things about it. It's got some nice touches. No, come on, let's give it its due. This crashing car rolling animation, that's really nice. You don't see that in a lot of overhead racing games, so that's really cool. To be honest, I'm debating whether to even include this on the list, because are we racing here? Are we just shooting stuff and surviving? I don't really know. The game is such an ADHD fever dream that it's really hard to keep track of what's happening. The game's biggest problem is, it's got really nice big sprites, everything looks great, but at top speed, it's one of those where you push up to go faster, but it puts you further and further up the screen. So when you're going top speed, you're like 3 pixels away from the edge of the screen. You've got no chance of seeing anything coming, no chance of dodging stuff. So you're never going at full pace anyway, and you've got like 3 lives, 1 hit and you're dead. So you're not travelling at full speed. Any success I've had at this game is travelling at a medium speed, and why would you do that to your game? If that sensation of speed is essential to a good racing game. Terrible design choice. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. Now, is it D? Is it that bad? It's not as bad as Grand Prix. It's definitely not as good as BMX Simulator. See, the difference with... I feel like we need another category here. We need a 6th category. Because Grand Prix, no one should ever play it ever. ever. You shouldn't touch it. Okay, you're doing yourself no favors by playing that game. Mean Machine, you should play it once, just for curiosity's sake. BMX, you could actually play with your mates and have some fun. Multiple times. Well, 2 or 3 times. But so yeah, top of D. I think that's quite generous actually. No, it's terrible. Who am I kidding? Right. Okay, back to the good games. Here we go. Nitro, a Psygnosis game with your typical Psygnosis presentation. Gorgeous graphics, gorgeous presentation, looks beautiful. Really nice idea for a game. It's got this post-apocalyptic feel. Although, was that tacked on afterwards? I don't know. The main game itself doesn't really show any kind of post-apocalyptic stuff. But then you've got these really cool Android versions or Terminator versions of 80s action heroes to play as. And then obviously the loading screen and the box cover art's got this kind of Mad Max vibe. But the game itself just seems like a bit of a cross-country racing fest. But yeah, anyway, I mean, it was coded by a guy called Jamie Woodhouse, top bloke. He would go on to make Quack, brilliant Amiga game, and then produce Quack for iOS. I'm going to say recently, but that's probably about 20 years ago. And he made a game called Retro. Is it called Retro Racing? I think that's right. Which was very Nitro on iOS as well. Anyway, great guy. What else can we say about it? It's got this kind of car choice mechanic, this rock, paper, scissors kind of thing, where you can pick an F1 car and be really quick on the tarmac, on the roads. You can pick a dune buggy type thing and be really quick off-road, but then really slow on the tarmac. And then you've got this supercar, which is like best of both worlds, kind of jack of all trades thing, which is it's a really good idea in principle, but only actually useful if you know what the next track is, and you don't until you pick it, and then the next track loads in. So yeah, a bit annoying because you could pick the wrong car, and I think on my playthrough here I picked the supercar and end up slow, because it's all on road. So yeah, good idea in theory, but doesn't really work. And you've got this gas mechanic, which is nice. Where you finish in the race awards you with an amount of gas, and if you run out of gas, obviously you lose. If you collide, you lose gas. All that kind of stuff. So rather than having like lives, it's your petrol is your lives, if you like. It does have problems in multiplayer. It's not split screen. You're both on the same screen, and if the guy that ends up lagging behind, it's like the Micro Machines mechanic, but it just expends a load of gas. It's not great. What else? There's loads of cool effects and details on the tracks. You got these little guys running across that you have to try and avoid. They slow you down when you hit them. You can pick up money to spend in the shop. There's nitro boosts you can hit. I mean, the crashes are so punishing in this game. You lose tons of time and gas when you crash. So yeah, and it can be quite difficult to see where you're going. Where you need to go. Sometimes you end up going down like dead ends and stuff. There are little arrows on the tracks sometimes which steer you in the right direction. It'd be nice to see those be a bit more consistent, I think, so you know exactly where to go. Because the CPU controlled opponents, they don't care. They know exactly where they're going. Another nice touch is there are nighttime levels where you can't see anything except what's illuminated by your headlights in a little circle ahead of you. That's really cool. It's just a really cool game. It's going in A. Really, really nice game. I mean, if it had better multiplayer, maybe we'd start flirting with S, I think. Right, moving on. Supercars. Okay, Supercars. Now, here's another Gremlin graphics game. Have we had a Gremlin graphics game yet? I don't think so. This is a Gremlin graphics game. And the development team were Magnetic Field. So this is the team behind Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge, and it shows the presentation is just superb. It's typical Magnetic Fields. It looks amazing. The music's amazing. All of the intro animations and your car specs sheets and stuff. It's all just fabulous. I absolutely lapped it up as, you know, a 10, 11-year-old or whatever it was when I played this game first. And it's got these really cool sections where you try and go in and buy a car, and you can try and use your charm to knock the price down and stuff like that. And there's a garage where you go and fix your car and upgrade your car. That's really cool as well. But overall, once you get into the game, it's a little bit sedate. It's got this weird kind of floaty engine. I mean, you can fix that. You know, if you go into the shop and you buy tyres from the off, it fixes that to some degree. But still, you know, from the off, it's a bit sedate. It's a bit slow. You have to play the game lots and lots and lots to get enough money to get the kind of upgrades, or to change your car into a faster one to get to those really fast, nail-biting races. So it's got that going against it. And on the ST, the graphics are really basic. Tracks look okay, but the cars the cars look like placeholder graphics, let's be honest. I don't know why. Has that just helped everything be a little bit smoother? Not sure. So where's this one going? I'm going to put this one A. I think probably the best of A. It is really good. It takes a while to get going, but once it gets going, it's really, really good. Okay, so next up, we've got Supercars 2. And it's a very similar game to Supercars, but every single aspect of the game has just gone up a notch. It's like everything a sequel should be. So again, it's by Magnetic Fields. It's got the same team. It's got the same amazing Magnetic Fields presentation and superb music and everything. But now it's tighter gameplay. Everything's just tuned really nicely. There's a nice challenge from the off. It's not too challenging, but you know, to get to the front of the pack amongst all these cars is a nice challenge straight away. So you haven't got like race after race of dull easy winning. You know, it's still a really a nice challenge, but things really ramp up later on. The graphics are much better. The tracks look amazing. I love the way the car is animated in Supercars 2. It kind of tilts and rolls and goes up and down the banks and things, and you can see the sides and the front and back of the car as it does so. It looks fabulous. The gameplay is meaner. The weaponry basically plays a big part of Supercars 2. You start with front and rear missiles, but you can buy homing missiles and battering rams and mines and all sorts, which really adds to the game too. It's just a fabulous game. It's going in at S. Not ahead of Super Sprint though, I hasten to add. I mean, these two are amongst my absolute favourite Atari ST games, so I'm really glad they're up in S. But yeah, they're incredible. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There is your tier list of overhead Atari ST racing games. Now, what do you think? Have a look at the list. Would you change anything? Do you think anything should be higher or lower? Let me know. Have I missed anything? Are there any games that you think should be on this list that I haven't included? Anyway, there you go, guys. If you've enjoyed that, please drop a like, a comment, all of that good stuff down below, and I'll see you again soon.